Welcome to Sleepy Facts with Justin. Tonight, we are going somewhere very few human eyes have ever seen. We are going down beneath the surface of the ocean, past the bright, sunlit shallows, where coral reefs shimmer in turquoise water, past the blue twilight, where the last threads of sunlight fade away, and down into the deep sea, a place of extraordinary silence, of total, absolute darkness, of creatures so gentle and so strange that they seem almost like dreams themselves. Tonight, you don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to do anything. All you need to do is breathe and let yourself drift. Imagine you are floating weightless just above the surface of the ocean at night. The water is calm beneath you, soft and cool. The stars above are very still. And somewhere far, far below you, in the quiet dark, the ocean is alive in ways that will soften your thoughts and ease your mind. Over the next few hours, we will travel together through the layers of the sea. We will meet creatures that glow like lanterns in the dark. We will visit ancient forests of coral that have been growing for thousands of years. We will rest beside the warmth of underwater volcanoes and drift along with the gentlest currents of the deep. There is no rush. There is nowhere to be. Let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you are resting now. Let your breathing slow and come with me down into the deep sea. The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet's surface. Think about that for a moment. More than 7 out of every 10 steps you could take across the surface of the earth would be steps across the sea. And yet, for most of human history, we knew very little about what lay beneath it. The ocean is not simply a body of water. It is a world unto itself, a layered, living world with different zones and different atmospheres, as distinct from one another as a meadow is from a mountain peak. The very top layer of the ocean, the part that catches the sunlight and sparkles and dances in the breeze, is called the epipelagic zone. It stretches from the surface down to about 200 meters. This is the layer we know best. This is where dolphins leap, where sea turtles glide, where schools of silvery fish turn and flash in the light like living mirrors. Below that, the light begins to thin. At around 200 meters, you cross an invisible line. The water becomes cooler. The color shifts from brilliant blue to something deeper, something more like indigo. And the light, that warm, golden, familiar light from the sun above, begins to fade. This next layer is called the mesopelagic zone. Scientists sometimes call it the twilight zone, and it is a fitting name. It is a place of in-between, not fully lit, not fully dark, a gentle, dimming transition, like the sky just after sunset, when the colors are soft and the world has not yet gone to sleep. Here, strange and wonderful creatures live their lives in the perpetual half-dark. Lanternfish flicker with tiny points of blue-green light along their flanks. Jellyfish drift past like slow-moving clouds. Krill rise and fall in great pulsing rivers of life. And then, deeper still, at 1,000 meters below the surface, the last trace of sunlight disappears entirely. There is no dawn here, no dusk, no cycle of day and night, just darkness. A darkness so complete and so total that it is hard for most of us to imagine. Not the darkness of a room with the curtains drawn, not the darkness of a moonless night in the countryside, but a pure, absolute, ancient darkness that has existed since the oceans formed, billions of years ago. This zone, from 1,000 to 4,000 meters, is called the bathypelagic zone, the midnight zone, and if you were to find yourself there, you would feel not just the darkness around you, but the weight of the water above you. The pressure at these depths is immense, hundreds of times greater than the pressure of the air we breathe on land. And yet, life is there. Life has always been there. The ocean, it turns out, is far more patient and far more creative than we once imagined. Creatures have found ways to live in every corner of this dark, pressurized, cold, and quiet world, and many of them are among the most extraordinary beings on our planet. Below the midnight zone, the ocean deepens further still into the abyssopelagic zone, stretching from 4,000 to 6,000 meters. Here, temperatures hover just a few degrees above freezing. The water is still. The pressure is crushing. And yet, even here, life persists. Soft, translucent creatures drifting in the cold. Sediment drifting slowly downward like a kind of underwater snow. Scientists call this gently falling debris marine snow. It is not snow at all, of course. It is a slow, constant shower of tiny particles, fragments of dead plankton, bits of organic material, microscopic flakes of life from the layers above, all slowly, gently drifting down through the dark water toward the seafloor to the creatures of the abyss. This marine snow is a gift. It is food arriving from above, carried down through the darkness like a quiet offering from a distant, sunlit world they will never see. Breathe slowly now. Let your body settle. The ocean is very deep and very old and very, very calm. The deeper zones of the sea are among the least explored places on Earth. Scientists have mapped the surface of Mars with greater precision than they have mapped the ocean floor. We know more about the craters of the moon than we do about the trenches beneath the sea. There is something quietly astonishing about that. The greatest mysteries on our planet are not in space. They are beneath the water, and tonight we have the luxury of exploring them slowly, gently, with nowhere to be and nothing to do but rest. The ocean has been here for over 4 billion years. It has seen the rise and fall of continents. It has sheltered life through ice ages and warm ages and every kind of change imaginable. It is patient in a way that nothing else on earth quite is. And as you rest here now, breathing slowly, letting your thoughts drift and soften like that gentle marine snow drifting through the deep, the ocean continues its patient, quiet existence far below the world's surface, layer by layer, zone by zone, deeper and deeper. We have only just begun our journey. Let us descend a little further now into that soft, dimming layer between light and dark. The mesopelagic zone, the twilight zone of the sea, sits between 200 and 1,000 meters below the surface. It is a zone defined by its in-between quality, by its sense of fading. It is neither sunlit nor fully dark. It is a world of gradients, of gentle transitions, and it is home to some of the most abundant life on the planet. You would not expect abundance in a place with so little light, but the twilight zone surprises us. In fact, the mesopelagic zone contains what may be the largest migration on Earth every single day as the sun sets above the ocean surface. Enormous numbers of tiny creatures, krill, small fish, tiny crustaceans, copepods rise upward through the water column toward the surface to feed in the relative richness of the upper ocean. And every morning, as daylight returns, they sink back down, descending into the safety of the dim water below. This movement is called diel vertical migration. Diel meaning daily, a vast, quiet, invisible tide of life, rising and falling, rising and falling, every single day, in every ocean on the planet. It is one of the great rhythms of the natural world, as steady and reliable as the turning of the tides, as ancient as the ocean itself. Among the most common residents of the twilight zone are the lanternfish. Small, dark-bodied fish, rarely more than a few centimeters long, covered in rows of tiny light-producing organs called photophores. These organs glow softly in shades of blue and green. In the perpetual dimness of the twilight zone, they create a gentle, scattered light, not bright enough to illuminate the darkness, but enough to communicate, enough to attract, enough to make the midnight water shimmer faintly as schools of them move together. Some scientists believe that lanternfish are among the most numerous vertebrates on Earth. Their combined biomass, the total weight of all of them together, may exceed that of all the fish caught by human fisheries in a single year. They are everywhere in the deep twilight, and yet most of us have never heard of them. There are also the siphonophores. These are among the strangest and most beautiful creatures in the twilight zone. A siphonophore is not one animal, but many, a long, drifting colony of tiny individual creatures called zooids. each one performing a different function for the colony as a whole. Some zooids swim, providing movement. Some sting and capture prey. Some digest. Some reproduce. Together, they function as a single organism, but they are, in truth, a community, a living rope of cooperation. Scientists have named more than 175 species of siphonophore. Some of them glow in brilliant blue-green. Some, when disturbed, flash bright blue like a sudden spark in the dark water. The giant siphonophore, known by the scientific name Praedubia, can grow to over 40 meters in length, making it one of the longest animals on Earth. And yet it drifts through the water so gently, so silently, that you would barely know it was there. Let that image settle softly in your mind. A creature 40 meters long, drifting through the dim ocean in perfect quiet. The twilight zone is also home to the vampire squid. Its name sounds alarming, but the creature itself is quite serene. Despite its name, it is not a true squid. It occupies its own unique branch of the cephalopod family tree, a living relic of an ancient lineage. It is small, about 30 centimeters long, with large, deep red eyes and a dark, velvety body that absorbs light. When threatened, it wraps its arms around itself like a cloak, revealing tiny, spine-like projections that make it look far more intimidating than it truly is. The vampire squid does not hunt actively. It feeds on marine snow, that gentle, constant drift of organic particles falling from above. It is one of the only cephalopods known to feed in this way. Patient, passive, drifting in the dim water with its arms outstretched, collecting what the ocean brings to it. There is something deeply restful about that image. An animal that does not chase, that does not rush, that simply opens itself to the world and waits for nourishment to arrive. Perhaps we can take some small inspiration from the vampire squid tonight. Let yourself be still. Let the quiet settle around you. Let your thoughts drift downward like marine snow, slowly, gently, without any particular destination. The twilight zone is also where many species of jellyfish make their home. These ancient, translucent creatures have been drifting through the world's oceans for over 500 million years. They predate the dinosaurs. They predate most complex life on land. And still, they drift quietly, purposefully, unchanged in their essential nature across all that vast and unimaginable time. A jellyfish has no brain, no heart, no bones. Its body is over 95% water. It is, in a very real sense, a part of the ocean that has learned to move and eat and reproduce. When you look at a jellyfish drifting in the dim water of the twilight zone, you are looking at one of the oldest forms of animal life on Earth. Breathe slowly. The ocean is so very old, and in its depths, creatures have been living their patient, quiet lives for longer than we can truly comprehend. Let the thought of all that quiet time settle you. Let it remind you that whatever you are carrying tonight, whatever thoughts or worries or small anxieties, they are very new things in a very ancient world. The ocean was here long before them, and it will be here long after. Rest now. Drift a little deeper. We still have so far to go. Somewhere in the deep water below you, something is glowing. Not a flashlight, not a lantern, not any light made by human hands. A living light, a soft blue-green shimmer produced by a living creature in the absolute darkness of the deep sea. This is bioluminescence. And in the deep ocean, it is everywhere. Around 3/4 of all creatures in the deep sea are bioluminescent. 3/4 in the world below the reach of sunlight, where darkness is total and permanent. The living things have made their own light. They have taken the chemistry of life and turned it into something luminous, something glowing, something that transforms the cold, dark water into a world of soft, flickering wonder. Bioluminescence is not a passive glow, like a piece of fluorescent rock left in the sunlight. It is an active, living process. The creature produces its own light through a chemical reaction. A molecule called luciferin reacts with oxygen, and in doing so, releases a tiny packet of light. Some creatures generate this light entirely on their own. Others take up bioluminescent bacteria from the water and house them in special light organs within their bodies in a kind of living partnership. The bacteria glow, and in exchange, they have a safe, warm home inside the creature. The light produced by most bioluminescent creatures is blue or green. This is not a coincidence. Blue and green wavelengths of light travel further through water than any other color. Red light, for example, is absorbed very quickly by seawater. Within the first few meters of depth, red light essentially disappears. But blue and green light can travel much further, and so the creatures of the deep have, over millions of years of evolution, arrived at the same elegant solution: glow blue-green and be seen. Perhaps the most famous bioluminescent creature in the deep sea is the anglerfish. You may know her from the animated film Finding Nemo. The terrifying fish in the darkness, with the glowing lure dangling above her massive toothed jaws. The real anglerfish is every bit as dramatic as her fictional counterpart. The anglerfish has a long, flexible spine growing from the top of her head, called the elysium. And at the very tip of this spine hangs a small, glowing bulb called the esca. Inside the esca, live colonies of bioluminescent bacteria. Their glow is gentle, rhythmic, pulsing softly in the dark. To a small fish or crustacean swimming nearby, it looks like something interesting, something worth investigating. And then the jaws close. The anglerfish does not swim great distances to find her food. She does not chase. She simply hangs in the darkness, her lure glowing softly, and waits, patient and still. The deep sea rewards patience. There are also the firefly squid of the Pacific Ocean, small creatures, barely a few centimeters long, covered in thousands of tiny photophores that can flash and ripple in coordinated patterns. They use these lights to communicate with one another, to find mates, to confuse predators. And when great numbers of firefly squid gather near the surface in the spring to spawn, the sea itself seems to glow. A soft blue shimmer spreading across the water as far as the eye can see. Imagine that, standing at the edge of the ocean on a dark spring night and watching the sea itself come alive with cold blue light. Millions of tiny creatures, all glowing together, turning the water into something that looks like a reflection of the stars above. Further down in the midnight zone, the giant siphonophores drift and glow. When they are disturbed, touched by a passing current, or brushed by another creature, they flash bright blue, a sudden, brilliant pulse of cold light in the absolute dark. And then, slowly, the light fades, and the darkness returns, and the siphonophore drifts on, unhurried. The vampire squid, too, has its bioluminescent gifts. When threatened, it releases a cloud of glowing mucus, a swirling, sparkling blue cloud that hangs in the dark water, confusing any predator, while the squid slips away into the deeper dark. It is a defense made of light, a distraction made of cold fire. Even the tiniest creatures of the deep glow, dinoflagellates, single-celled organisms so small they are invisible to the naked eye, can produce bioluminescence when disturbed, when waves break on a dark night, or when a ship's hull pushes through the water. The disturbance causes millions of these tiny creatures to flash at once. The sea glows with them. Whole bays have been known to light up, transforming dark water into a luminous, otherworldly blue. Sailors have written about this phenomenon for hundreds of years. Ancient mariners crossing dark seas would watch in wonder as their ships left glowing wakes behind them, trails of cold fire stretching back into the darkness. They did not know what caused it, but they found it beautiful. They found it comforting, perhaps, a reminder that even in the dark, the sea was alive, and it is still alive. Tonight and every night, somewhere in the deep ocean, creatures are glowing. Blue-green light pulses through dark water. Lanternfish shimmer in great drifting schools. Anglerfish dangle their patient lures. Siphonophores flash and fade, and dinoflagellates spark and vanish in the wake of passing currents. You do not need to see any of this to feel it. Somewhere beneath the surface of our world, there is a quiet, gentle light, a living light, ancient and calm and utterly unhurried. It has been there for hundreds of millions of years. It will be there long after tonight. Let that soft, blue-green glow settle into your imagination now. Picture it, a cool, distant shimmer, somewhere very deep and very still, glowing softly in the dark. Let it be the last thing on your mind as your thoughts begin to soften. Breathe slowly. The light is there. The ocean is alive, and you can rest. We go deeper now. 1,000 meters below the surface of the sea. The last thread of sunlight is gone. The water above you, all 1,000 meters of it, presses down with a force that would crush an unprotected human body in an instant. The temperature here is just a few degrees above freezing. The water is still. The darkness is total. This is the midnight zone, the bathypelagic zone, and it is one of the largest habitats on Earth. It stretches from 1,000 meters down to 4,000 meters. In terms of sheer volume, the amount of space it occupies, it dwarfs the sunlit ocean above it, and yet it is one of the least understood environments on our planet. Only a handful of submersible vehicles have ever explored it directly. Most of what we know comes from trawl nets, from cameras lowered on long cables, from the occasional lucky photograph, and what those photographs reveal is astonishing. In the midnight zone, there are creatures that have evolved in complete isolation from sunlight for so many millions of years that they have lost their eyes entirely. Eyes, after all, require energy to build and maintain. And in a world where there is nothing to see, eyes are a luxury that evolution quietly eliminates. Some deep-sea crustaceans are completely blind. Their world is perceived entirely through touch, through vibration, through chemical signals in the water. Others, however, have done the opposite. Faced with absolute darkness, some creatures of the midnight zone have evolved eyes so large they take up most of the head. The giant squid, that enormous, legendary creature of the deep, has eyes that can be as wide as a dinner plate. The largest eyes of any animal on Earth. Eyes built to catch the faintest possible trace of bioluminescent light in the eternal dark. In the midnight zone, there are also the dragonfish. These small, serpentine fish are among the most remarkable predators in the deep sea. They hang in the water column, nearly invisible, waiting for vertically migrating prey to pass by. Their bodies are covered in ultra-black skin that absorbs nearly all light, making them almost entirely invisible even when exposed to bioluminescence. And some species of dragonfish have evolved something extraordinary, the ability to see and emit red light. Red light, as we noted earlier, disappears within the first few meters of the ocean. Almost nothing in the deep sea can see it, which means a dragonfish that can produce a beam of red light is carrying a secret torch, illuminating its surroundings in a wavelength that its prey cannot detect. It can see without being seen. It can hunt in a world of apparent darkness, while secretly bathing everything in invisible red. There are also the tripod fish. These quiet, patient creatures of the midnight zone have evolved extraordinarily long fins, two extending downward from the pelvic region and one from the tail, that they use as stilts to prop themselves up on the ocean floor. They stand on the muddy seafloor of the midnight zone, facing into the current, perfectly still, their fins outstretched to detect the vibrations of any small creature drifting close enough to eat. They wait, sometimes for a very long time. They do not chase. They do not rush. They simply stand in the cold dark and wait, and let the ocean bring them what it will. There is something meditative about the tripod fish, something that feels, in its patient stillness, almost like wisdom. The midnight zone is also home to the barrel-eye fish, a small, transparent-headed creature with remarkable tubular eyes that point upward through its transparent skull. The barrel-eye can rotate its eyes to look directly above it, searching for the silhouettes of prey against the faint, distant glow of the water far above. Its head is filled with a clear, jelly-like fluid through which its enormous, green, cylindrical eyes can be seen from outside. Imagine that. A fish whose head is made of glass, a creature you could look through to see its eyes looking back at you. The deep sea is full of such strangeness, full of such quiet, unexpected beauty. In the midnight zone, the water temperature remains remarkably stable, around 4 degrees Celsius, the same temperature as the inside of a refrigerator. Cold, but not freezing. Still, unchanging. The midnight zone does not experience seasons. It does not experience storms. The great weather events that churn the surface of the ocean, hurricanes, typhoons, the rolling swells of winter, they barely register here. A thin ripple, perhaps, a barely perceptible change in pressure, and then stillness again. The midnight zone is one of the most stable environments on Earth. The same cold, dark, still water has persisted here for millions of years, largely undisturbed. The creatures that live here have evolved in that stability, slow growing, long-lived, patient. Some deep-sea fish are believed to live for decades. Some deep-sea corals, the slow-growing, cold water varieties found at these depths, have been dated at over 4,000 years old. A single coral colony growing in the cold dark for longer than recorded human history. That kind of time is very hard to hold in the mind, and perhaps that is part of its comfort when you think of something that has existed for 4,000 years, something living, something growing, however slowly, in the cold and the dark. It tends to put things in perspective. Our worries are very recent. Our troubles are very small. The ocean does not know them. In the midnight zone, right now, a tripod fish is standing on its stilts in the dark. A dragonfish is floating in the cold water, waiting. A barreleye is gazing upward through its glass head, watching for shadows, and none of them know anything about the surface world, the cities and the lights, the noise and the rushing, the endless, hurrying pace of life above. They know only the cold, the stillness, the dark, and the patient, unhurried passage of time. Let that stillness come to you now. Let the cold and the dark and the quiet of the midnight zone settle gently over your thoughts. There is nothing to chase tonight, nothing to hunt, just the slow drift of the deep sea and the soft, silent weight of the water above. Rest here for a little while. In 1977, a team of scientists aboard a deep-sea submersible called Alvin descended into the darkness of the Pacific Ocean near the Galapagos Islands. They were not expecting to find much. The deep seafloor had been thought, for most of scientific history, to be a barren, nearly lifeless place. Cold, dark, featureless. A kind of underwater desert. What they found instead changed everything we thought we knew about life at a depth of nearly 2.5 kilometers in a place where no sunlight had ever penetrated. They discovered something extraordinary. A cluster of hydrothermal vents, cracks in the seafloor where superheated, mineral-rich water was pouring up from beneath the Earth's crust and gathered around these vents. In the scalding heat and the poisonous chemistry of the outflow was an explosion of life unlike anything science had ever seen. Tube worms as tall as a person, giant clams, white crabs, blind shrimp, pale, trembling organisms clustered around the warmth of the vents, like animals gathered around a fire in a winter storm. It was a world that ran on an entirely different kind of energy. Almost all life on Earth is ultimately powered by the sun. Plants capture sunlight and convert it to chemical energy. Animals eat plants. Other animals eat those animals. Every link in the food chain, from the smallest microbe to the largest whale, can be traced back to that original spark of solar energy. But at hydrothermal vents, the sun has no role. Here, the energy source is chemistry. Superheated water emerging from the vents is rich in hydrogen sulfide, a toxic gas, poisonous to most life. But certain bacteria have evolved the ability to convert hydrogen sulfide into chemical energy in a process called chemosynthesis, and these bacteria become the base of a food chain that requires no sunlight at all. The bacteria are eaten by tiny invertebrates. Those are eaten by larger creatures, and so on. Life, it turns out, doesn't need sunlight. It needs energy. And energy can come from the earth itself. The vents that produce the most dramatic hydrothermal activity are called black smokers. They are chimneys of dark mineral deposits built up over years of mineral precipitation from the hot outflow that pour dense, black, smoke-like plumes of superheated water into the cold surrounding sea. The water emerging from a black smoker can be over 400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead, and yet just a few centimeters away, the surrounding water is close to freezing. The creatures that live around black smokers exist in that extraordinary gradient between scalding heat and icy cold, in a zone of chemical abundance that would kill almost anything from the surface world. The giant tube worms that cluster around hydrothermal vents, Pachyptilla, are among the most remarkable animals ever discovered. They have no mouth, no stomach, no digestive system of any kind. Instead, their bodies are packed with a special organ called a trophosome, which houses billions of chemosynthetic bacteria. The bacteria process the hydrogen sulfide that the tube worm absorbs through its bright red plume. The feathery crown that waves gently in the vent currents and produce the nutrients the tube worm needs to live. The tube worm and its bacteria live in complete partnership. Neither could survive without the other. The tube worm provides the bacteria with a home and a steady supply of hydrogen sulfide. The bacteria provide the tube worm with everything it needs to grow and live. They can grow to over 2 meters in length, and they can live for over 100 years. Patient creatures, tube worms, standing in the warm current of the vents, waving their red plumes in the dark water, absorbing the chemistry of the earth itself and turning it into life. Around the vents, there are also the Pompeii worms, named for the Roman city buried by a volcanic eruption. These small, bristly worms build papery tubes against the sides of the vent chimneys, where temperatures can swing dramatically from one end of their body to the other. Their tail ends may be exposed to water approaching 80 degrees Celsius, while their head ends rest in water closer to 22. They are believed to be the most heat-tolerant multicellular animals on Earth. They simply live with the extremes. They do not fight them. They have built their lives around the heat, the chemistry, the pressure, and they thrive. There is something quietly inspiring about the creatures of the hydrothermal vents. They are life at its most resilient. Life finding a way not just to survive, but to flourish in conditions that seem impossible, in places no one thought to look. The warm glow of the vents, in the cold dark of the deep sea floor feels, in some way, like a kind of comfort. A reminder that warmth can exist in the deepest places. That life can find its way even in the dark. If you are feeling the pull of sleep right now, if your thoughts are beginning to slow and drift, that is perfectly fine. You are doing exactly what this journey is for. There is no need to follow every word. Let them flow past you like warm vent water rising through cold, dark ocean, absorbing what you will, letting the rest drift gently by. The vent communities are not permanent. Over decades and centuries, the geological forces that create them shift. A vent that has been active for 100 years may go quiet. And when it does, the community around it, the tube worms, the clams, the pale crabs, all the creatures that have built their lives around that particular column of warmth, must wait for a new vent to open nearby, or slowly, quietly fade. But new vents always open. The earth is always restless beneath the ocean floor. Tectonic plates shift. Magma moves. New cracks appear in the seafloor, and slowly the bacteria arrive first, then the invertebrates, then the fish, and life begins again. In the dark, in the warmth, in the extraordinary, patient, improbable deep. There is a place on this earth so deep that if you placed Mount Everest inside it, the peak of the mountain would still be over a mile beneath the surface of the sea. That place is the Mariana Trench. It lies in the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Mariana Islands. It was formed, like all the great ocean trenches, by the slow, grinding process of tectonic subduction. One of the Earth's great tectonic plates sliding beneath another, pushing the seafloor down into the planet over millions of years. The result is a long, curved gash in the ocean floor, nearly 2,500 kilometers long, and at its deepest point, nearly 11 kilometers below the surface. That deepest point is called Challenger Deep. Challenger Deep reaches a depth of 10,984 meters, close to 11 kilometers, nearly 7 miles. It is the deepest known place on the surface of the Earth, and at the bottom of Challenger Deep, there is life. The first humans to descend to Challenger Deep did so in 1960. 2 men, Jacques Pickard and Don Walsh, in a submersible called the Trieste. They descended for nearly 5 hours through the dark water, the pressure building around them with every meter, and eventually came to rest on the muddy floor of the deepest place on Earth. Through their porthole, they saw a flatfish swim past. Life, even there. In 2012, the filmmaker and explorer James Cameron made the first solo descent to Challenger Deep in a specially designed submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger. He spent several hours at the bottom, filming and collecting samples. He described the floor as a desolate, lunar-like landscape, flat, soft mud stretching in every direction, in absolute darkness, under a pressure of over 1,000 atmospheres, 1,000 times the pressure of the air at sea level, enough to crush an unprotected human instantly. And yet, the microbes are there. Researchers studying the sediment brought up from Challenger Deep have found an unexpected richness of microbial life, bacteria, archaea, ancient single-celled organisms so different from all other life that they constitute their own domain of biology. These microscopic creatures thrive in the cold, dark, pressurized mud of the deepest ocean. They are not simply surviving. They are metabolizing, growing, living their quiet, invisible, ancient lives. The entire zone of the deepest ocean trenches, from 6,000 meters down to the maximum depth of nearly 11,000 meters, is called the Hadal Zone, named for Hades, the Greek underworld. The zone below the zone below the zone. The deepest realm of all. The hadal zone covers only about 1 to 2% of the ocean floor by area, and yet it accounts for the deepest 45% of the ocean's total vertical depth. It is not a large place geographically, but it is a very deep one. In the hadal zone, researchers have found creatures called hadal snailfish, small, pale, soft-bodied fish that are the deepest dwelling vertebrates ever recorded in 2023. A hadal snailfish was filmed at a depth of over 8,000 meters in the Japan Trench, deeper than any fish had ever been observed before. These small fish have evolved remarkable adaptations to their extreme environment. Their bodies contain high concentrations of a molecule called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, which stabilizes their proteins against the crushing pressure that would otherwise denature and destroy them. Their skulls are not fully fused. They are loosely connected, flexible, able to flex slightly under the enormous pressure rather than cracking. Their eyes have evolved to detect only a single wavelength of dim light. Every part of them has been shaped over millions of years for this one extraordinary environment. The Mariana Trench is also home to giant amphipods, crustaceans that look something like large shrimp, typically a few centimeters long in shallow water environments, but growing to over 30 centimeters in the hadal zone. This is an example of a fascinating phenomenon called deep-sea gigantism. The tendency of deep-sea creatures to grow much larger than their shallow water relatives. It may be related to the cold temperatures, the high pressure, or the different oxygen dynamics at depth. Whatever the cause, the result is striking. Creatures of the deep that tower over their cousins in the shallows. The floor of the Mariana Trench is soft and silty, a carpet of fine sediment that has accumulated over millions of years. Marine snow, that gentle, constant drift of organic particles from the ocean above, falls for kilometers through the dark water before finally coming to rest on the trench floor. By the time it arrives, it has been traveling for days, and it brings with it nutrients, carbon, the chemical remnants of life from the sunlit world far above. In this way, the deepest trench on Earth is connected to the surface, invisibly, slowly, by a thread of falling particles that bridges 11 kilometers of dark water. Recent research has revealed that the Mariana Trench is not a single, unified feature, as scientists once believed. It is, in fact, composed of 5 isolated deep areas, separated by geological highs, underwater ridges that divide the trench floor into distinct compartments. Each of these isolated areas may host its own unique communities of organisms, evolved separately over millions of years in their deep, dark pockets of the seafloor. 5 separate worlds within one trench, beneath one ocean. The deep sea is always more complex than we expect, always more alive, always surprising those who look closely enough. At the very bottom of the world, in the cold and the dark and the crushing pressure of Challenger Deep, something is living right now, tonight, as you rest and breathe, and let the quiet settle over you. Something small and pale is moving through the sediment of the deepest place on Earth. It does not know it is the deepest. It does not know the word extraordinary. It simply lives quietly, patiently, in the dark, as can you tonight. Let the depth of the ocean hold you. Let the quiet of those great dark miles press gently on your thoughts, like the soft weight of deep water. You are safe. You are still. And the ocean is very, very deep. We rise now, just a little from the very deepest places. We are still deep, hundreds of meters below the surface, in the cold and the dark. But here, on the slopes of underwater mountains and ridges, something grows that most people never associate with the deep sea. Coral. Not the bright, sun-drenched coral reefs of tropical shallows. Those vivid cities of color that you may have seen in photographs or documentaries, teeming with reef fish and sea turtles, and the brilliant blue of warm, clear water. Those are the coral reefs of the sunlit zone. Beautiful, yes, but they are only one kind of coral. Deep sea corals are something else entirely. They grow in cold, dark water on photosynthetic algae living in their tissues. Deep sea corals get all their nutrition by capturing tiny particles of food from the water that flows past them. They extend 8 tiny feeding tentacles from each of their mouths, one for each of the 8 arms that gives the group its name, octocorals, and they filter the water patiently, hour after hour, century after century, and they grow extraordinarily slowly. A deep-sea coral colony may grow just a few centimeters in a year, or less. A large colony, one of the ancient tree-like structures found on deep-sea ridges and seamounts, may have been growing for a very, very long time. Some deep-sea coral colonies have been dated at over 4,000 years old. 4,000 years. To put that in perspective, 4,000 years ago, the Great Pyramid of Giza had just been completed. Ancient Egypt was in its early dynastic period. The wheel had only recently been invented. The world's oldest written stories were still being composed, and the coral was already growing. It was already reaching its tiny tentacles into the cold, dark water, already filtering particles of food, already building its slow, patient, beautiful structure, millimeter by millimeter, year by year, century by century, and it is still growing now. These ancient coral gardens serve as more than just passive structures. They are what ecologists call ecosystem engineers. Their very presence creates habitat for hundreds of other species. A single ancient coral colony may host dozens of different animals. Serpent stars draped over its branches, tiny crustaceans nestled in its crevices, small fish sheltering in its shadow. Some of these associated species are so closely adapted to their coral host that they are almost never found living anywhere else. Some serpent stars live their entire lives on the same coral colony. They are born there, they feed there, they reproduce there, and they die there, never leaving their ancient, slowly growing home. Museum specimens of these serpent star coral partnerships show that even after death, some of the stars will not release their grip from the coral. They hold on, even after everything they hold on. The deep sea ridges and underwater mountains, called seamounts, where these coral gardens grow, are places of remarkable biological richness. Seamounts disrupt the flow of deep ocean currents, creating upwellings of nutrient-rich water that support dense communities of filter feeders like corals and sponges. These communities, in turn, attract fish, crustaceans, echinoderms, and dozens of other creatures that depend on the habitat the corals create. There are estimated to be over 100,000 seamounts in the world's oceans. Some of them rise from abyssal depths to within a few hundred meters of the surface. Invisible mountains hidden beneath the sea, each one potentially host to its own unique garden of ancient corals. The deep sea sponges that grow alongside the corals are equally extraordinary. Some sponge species are among the oldest living animals on Earth, with some individuals estimated to be over 10,000 years old. 10,000 years. Alive before the end of the last ice age. Alive when the first agricultural civilizations were beginning to take shape on land. Growing slowly, silently, in the cold dark of the deep sea. Sponges are among the simplest of all animals. No nervous system, no muscles, no organs as we would recognize them. They are essentially a living filter, drawing water in through thousands of tiny pores, extracting the particles of food within it, and expelling the filtered water back out. Their entire existence is a kind of patient, gentle breath, drawing in and releasing, drawing in and releasing in the quiet dark for thousands of years. Breathe in, breathe out, like the sponge, like the coral, like the deep sea itself, which in its own slow way breathes with the great cycling of ocean currents that carry warm water and cold water and oxygen and nutrients through the dark passages of the deep. In these ancient coral gardens, time moves differently. The urgency that seems to govern life at the surface, the racing of seasons, the rushing of tides, the darting of fish in bright shallows. It has no place here. Here, time is measured in decades, in centuries, in the slow, incremental growth of a coral colony, one tiny polyp at a time. There is a kind of freedom in that slowness, a kind of peace. You do not have to do anything quickly tonight. You do not have to accomplish anything. You are simply resting like the coral in your own small patch of quiet, breathing, existing, gently, patiently in the dark. The coral does not worry about tomorrow. It does not keep track of yesterday. It simply extends its tiny tentacles into the passing current and takes whatever nourishment the ocean brings. In your own way tonight, you can do the same. Let your thoughts extend gently without grasping. Let whatever is good and soft and restful come to you, and let whatever is sharp or urgent or restless drift past somewhere in the deep right now. An ancient coral is doing exactly that. It has been doing it for 4,000 years. It is perfectly fine to let your attention drift and float. You don't need to follow every word. Just let the sounds wash gently over you, like the deep sea washing over the ancient seafloor. The deep ocean has a curious tendency to produce giants. We touched on this earlier, the phenomenon scientists call deep sea gigantism. In many different groups of animals, the species that live in the deep sea are dramatically larger than their shallow water or terrestrial relatives, giant isopods, giant amphipods, giant squid, giant tube worms. The deep sea seems to encourage size in ways that the shallower world does not. The reasons are not entirely agreed upon. It may relate to the cold temperatures. Cold water slows metabolism, and slower metabolism may allow animals to live longer and grow larger before reproducing. It may relate to the scarcity of food. Larger animals can store more energy and go longer between meals. It may relate to the different pressures on predation in the deep. Whatever the cause, the result is a world of unexpected scale. A world where creatures that are a few centimeters long in a tide pool might grow to 30 centimeters or more in the dark cold of the abyss. Among the most iconic giants of the deep is the giant squid, Architeuthis ducks. For most of human history, the giant squid was a creature of legend. Ancient sailors returned from long voyages with stories of sea monsters, enormous tentacled creatures that could capsize ships, drag sailors into the deep, engulf entire vessels in their coiling arms. In Norse mythology, this creature was called the Kraken, a beast so large that sailors sometimes mistook it for an island and tried to land upon it. The truth, as it turns out, is nearly as extraordinary as the legend. Giant squid are real. They can grow to over 12 meters in length, including their tentacles. They have the largest eyes of any living animal. Each eye can be up to 27 centimeters across, roughly the size of a dinner plate. These enormous eyes are built to detect the faint bioluminescent flashes of the deep. To see in a world where seeing requires something very different from what eyes are built for at the surface. For most of the 20th century, scientists had never seen a living giant squid. They knew the creatures existed. Dead specimens had washed ashore or been found in the stomachs of sperm whales, but no living individual had ever been observed in its natural habitat. It was not until 2004 that the first photographs of a living giant squid were taken by Japanese researchers using a baited camera line dropped into the dark water of the Pacific. The images showed something both familiar and deeply alien. A creature built like something from imagination, vast, pale, moving through the darkness with a slow, hypnotic grace. The giant squid shares the deep sea with its even larger relative, the colossal squid, Mesonichotuthis hamiltoni, which is believed to be the largest invertebrate on Earth, potentially reaching lengths of over 14 meters and weights of over 500 kilograms. The colossal squid is known primarily from specimens recovered from sperm whale stomachs, and only a handful of intact individuals have ever been observed or caught. It remains one of the great mysteries of the deep. Sperm whales, in fact, are themselves extraordinary animals of the deep. They are the largest toothed predators on Earth, growing to over 20 meters in length, and they routinely dive to depths of over 1,000 meters in search of squid, sometimes diving even deeper to 2,000 meters or more. They can hold their breath for up to 90 minutes. And in the deep dark, they hunt by echolocation, producing clicks so powerful they are among the loudest sounds made by any animal on Earth. And listening for the echoes that bounce back from squid in the darkness, imagine being deep underwater in total darkness and hearing the slow, rhythmic click of a sperm whale searching for food. Each click a pulse of sound that travels hundreds of meters in every direction. And then, in the fractions of a second before the next click, a silence so complete that you could hear the movement of the water around you. Click, silence. Click, silence. The whale moves through the dark, following the echoes, descending slowly toward wherever the squid is hiding. The squid, perhaps, sees the dark shape above it, or perhaps only feels the displacement of water as the enormous animal approaches. These encounters happen every day, in every ocean, far below the reach of light. Enormous animals hunting and being hunted in a darkness and silence that few humans have ever experienced. And then there are the giant isopods, crustaceans related to the tiny pill bugs or roly-polies you might find under a rock in your garden. In shallow water, isopods are small, a centimeter or two. In the deep sea, giant isopods can grow to over 45 centimeters in length. They roam the seafloor, scavenging whatever food descends from above: the bodies of dead fish, the carcasses of whales, the scraps of marine snow that have accumulated on the muddy bottom. Giant isopods can go without food for extraordinary periods of time. In captivity, some individuals have survived for over 4 years without eating. They simply slow their metabolism, conserve their energy, and wait, patient, unhurried, in no particular rush. In the cold dark of the deep, patience is the great survival strategy. Everything here has learned to wait, to slow down, to exist without urgency. Let that be your guide tonight. Let the lesson of the deep sea giants settle into your body. There is no need to move, rush. No need to be anywhere or do anything. Like the giant isopod, simply rest. Conserve. Wait. The ocean is patient. The deep is quiet. And sleep, like the slow drift of marine snow through the dark, is coming to you. We tend to think of the deep sea as silent, and in some ways it is. The absence of light gives the deep a quality of silence. The stillness of the cold water, the lack of wind, the absolute darkness, all of these things feel intuitively like they should come with silence. But the deep ocean is not silent at all. Sound travels through water approximately 4.5 times faster than it travels through air, and it travels much farther. In the ocean, sound is not muffled and absorbed the way it is on land. It spreads. It resonates. It echoes off underwater mountains and rifts and the sloping walls of continental shelves, and travels extraordinary distances through the dark water. The ocean is full of sound, and the deep sea is no exception. There is, first and most hauntingly, the singing of the whales. Blue whales, the largest animals ever known to have existed on Earth, produce low-frequency calls that can travel thousands of kilometers through the ocean. Their voices operate at frequencies so low that humans can barely hear them without amplification. But in the deep ocean, these calls propagate with extraordinary efficiency, carrying the whale's voice across entire ocean basins. A blue whale in the Pacific can, in certain conditions, be heard by another blue whale near Antarctica. Not clearly, not as a conversation, but as a deep, low, reverberant hum, reaching through thousands of kilometers of dark water, carrying information about the whale's location, its identity, its readiness to mate. Imagine the loneliness of that, and the wonder. A voice that crosses an ocean. A song heard by an animal thousands of miles away, in the dark, beneath the crushing weight of miles of water. Humpback whales produce the most complex songs in the animal kingdom. Their songs can last for hours. They change over time, not randomly, but in coordinated ways, so that all the male humpback whales in a given ocean region gradually adopt the same song. as if they are all listening and learning and slowly agreeing on a common melody. The song drifts and evolves. New phrases appear. Old ones are abandoned. It is, in a very real sense, a living music, one that changes year by year across entire ocean populations. No one fully understands why. It may be for mate attraction. It may serve some other social function. But the humpback whale's song is one of the most extraordinary phenomena in the natural world. And it happens in the deep ocean, far from any coast, in the dark water, in the cold, beyond the whales. The deep ocean carries other sounds. The crackle of shrimp snapping shrimp colonies produce a collective sound that registers as a continuous crackle, like static or like the sound of a fire, spreading across wide areas of the seafloor and shallow reef. The low, slow pulse of underwater volcanic activity, the deep groaning of tectonic plates shifting against one another in the dark, and stranger sounds still. In 1997, scientists operating hydrophones in the South Pacific Ocean, underwater microphones capable of detecting sound at great distances, recorded a mysterious ultra-low frequency sound they could not immediately identify. It was extraordinarily loud, detectable by hydrophones across a distance of 5,000 kilometers. And it had a distinctive shape, a slow, rising frequency that reminded the researchers who heard it of something biological. They named it the bloop. For years, the bloop was one of the great mysteries of ocean acoustics. Various theories were proposed: a giant squid, an unknown organism of enormous size, something entirely new. Eventually, scientists concluded that the bloop was almost certainly the sound of a large ice quake, the fracturing of a massive ice shelf somewhere in the Antarctic. The sound signature matched, the location matched. The mystery was solved, but for a time, for the years between its recording and its explanation, the bloop stood as a reminder that the ocean can produce sounds we cannot explain, that the deep is vast enough and strange enough to hold surprises that humble our understanding. The ocean has its own voice. Many voices, in fact. A deep, ongoing conversation between creatures and geology and physics, carried through the dark water in waves of sound that we are only beginning to learn to hear. And then there is a layer of the ocean where sound does not simply travel, it is trapped. The Sofar channel, sound fixing and ranging channel, is a layer of the ocean, typically between about 600 and 900 meters deep, where the temperature and pressure combine to create conditions that bend sound waves back toward the center of the layer, rather than allowing them to escape upward or downward. Sound that enters this channel travels in a kind of acoustic waveguide, bouncing between the upper and lower boundaries of the layer, losing very little energy, carrying on and on through the ocean for extraordinary distances. Blue whale calls are perfectly tuned to propagate through the Sofar channel. Their low frequencies match the physics of the layer almost exactly. It is as though the whales have evolved their voices to fit a natural acoustic highway built into the ocean itself. In World War II, this channel was used by the United States Navy to help locate downed pilots in the ocean. A pilot could drop a small explosive charge, and the sound would travel through the Sofar channel to hydrophone stations thousands of miles away, allowing rescuers to triangulate the source. The ocean, even in its deepest and most silent-seeming places, is carrying sound, carrying voices, carrying the slow creaks and groans of the earth, the songs of whales, the crackle of distant shrimp colonies, and the long, low resonance of the ice. It is, in its way, a kind of music. Not music as we compose it, with melody and rhythm and intention, but music in the older sense, vibration, resonance, the ocean speaking to itself in the dark. Let that music come to you now, not as sound. There is no sound here, only the quiet of your resting place, but as a feeling, a sense of resonance, of vibration, of the deep, low hum of a world much larger and more ancient than the one we usually occupy. Breathe slowly and listen to the quiet. And still, despite all of this, we have explored only a a small fraction of the deep ocean floor directly. Less than 5% of the global seafloor has been mapped in high resolution, and even less has been explored with cameras or submersibles. The deep sea remains, by far, the largest unexplored region on Earth, larger in area than all the land surface combined. It is a humbling thought. The greatest mysteries of our planet are right here beneath us, in the dark water. And we are only beginning to learn their names. Modern exploration continues with remarkable new technologies. Autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, can now dive to extreme depths and map the seafloor in 3 dimensions. DNA sequencing allows scientists to identify species from water samples alone, without ever seeing the creature itself. And initiatives like NOAA's Ocean Exploration Trust and the Ocean Census Project are systematically targeting the most unexplored regions, discovering new species by the thousands. In 2024 alone, expeditions to the Clarion-Clipperton Zone in the Pacific discovered over 100 new species of deep-sea life. And in the South Pacific, researchers using ROVs documented vast coral gardens and sponge fields that had never been seen before. The deep sea is not static. It is alive with discovery. But exploration is slow and expensive. A single dive to Challenger Deep costs tens of millions of dollars. Submersibles like Alvin can only operate for a few hours at extreme depths before needing to return to the surface. And the technology required to withstand the pressure, the cold, the darkness, it is extraordinarily complex, and yet we keep going. Because the deep sea holds not just biological wonders, but geological and chemical secrets as well. Hydrothermal vents, cold seeps, polymetallic nodules on the seafloor. All of these may hold clues to the origins of life on Earth, to the potential for life on other planets, to resources that could power a sustainable future. The drive to explore the deep is the same one that has always driven human beings. Curiosity, a quiet, persistent wonder about what lies beyond the edge of what we know. Tonight, as you rest, you can be part of that exploration in your own way, not with technology, not with funding, but with imagination. Picture the scientists aboard a research vessel in the middle of the Pacific, the ship rocking gently in the swells. The dark ocean all around, stretching to every horizon. In the control room, screens flicker with data from a submersible miles below. Lights pierce the darkness. A new creature appears in the camera feed. Something translucent, something glowing, something never seen before. The scientists lean closer. They whisper to one another. They record the moment, and somewhere far above, in the warmth of the ship, someone makes tea. The deep sea invites patience. It rewards slowness. It teaches us that the most extraordinary things are often the ones that take the longest to find. Rest now, knowing that the exploration continues. That every day, the map of the known world grows a little larger. That the ocean, patient as always, is waiting. Every creature in the deep sea has found a way to live in a world without light. No sunlight, no day, no night, just darkness stretching back millions of years. And so evolution has responded with astonishing creativity. Eyes disappear, bodies become transparent, skin turns ultra black, absorbing every stray photon. And bioluminescence, that gentle, living light, becomes the primary sense for seeing and being seen. Consider the glass squid. Its body is almost entirely transparent, a living ghost in the water column. Its eyes are enormous, pointed directly forward. Its digestive system is visible through its skin, and its skin itself is so thin and clear that light passes through it with almost no reflection. It is, in every sense, a creature designed to vanish, to swim through the dark water without casting a shadow, without betraying its presence to anything watching. The black dragonfish, as we met earlier, takes the opposite approach. Its body is coated in a melanin-rich skin, so black it absorbs 99.5% of light that strikes it, making it functionally invisible even when illuminated by bioluminescence, and it carries its own red light. invisible to most deep-sea creatures, to illuminate its prey without being detected. Pressure is another master that every deep-sea creature must serve. At 1,000 meters, the pressure is 100 times greater than at the surface. At 10,000 meters, it is 1,000 times greater. Bones would crush. Air-filled spaces would implode, so deep-sea fish have largely abandoned swim bladders, those gas-filled organs that help surface fish maintain buoyancy. Instead, their flesh is laced with high concentrations of trimethylamine oxide, TMAO, a molecule that stabilizes proteins against the crushing force. Their bodies are soft, gelatinous, compressible. They achieve neutral buoyancy not through gas, but through chemistry. Their tissues as dense as the water around them. Temperature is low and stable, rarely varying more than a degree or two. From 4 degrees Celsius, metabolism slows, growth slows, lifespans lengthen. The Greenland shark, a deep-sea dweller, may live for 400 years or more, the longest-lived vertebrate known. Food is scarce. So many deep-sea creatures have evolved enormous mouths lined with long, sharp teeth. The gulper eel, also called the pelican eel, has a mouth that can expand to engulf prey many times larger than its own body. Its stomach balloons out like a pelican's pouch. It swallows first and digests later. Others, like the sea angels, tiny, winged sea snails, have evolved elaborate hunting tactics. They extend long, sticky tentacles to capture copepods, then retract them and consume their prey alive. Reproduction in the deep is often a solitary, patient affair. Females of many species, like the anglerfish, carry enormous supplies of eggs, releasing them into the water in vast clouds to drift on the currents. Males are tiny, sometimes parasitic, latching onto the female and fusing with her body, becoming little more than a source of sperm for the rest of her life. Some species practice live birth. Snaggletooths and viperfish give birth to fully formed young, ready to hunt from the moment they emerge. Every adaptation is a quiet miracle. Every creature a testament to what life life can do when given darkness, cold, pressure, and time. Let these adaptations remind you of your own. Your body, too, is adapted to its environment, to rest, to breathe, to release the day. Let the slow metabolism of the deep come to you now. Slow your breath. Lengthen your exhales. Become still in the dark. The deep sea has had millions of years to perfect its adaptations. You have only this moment, and it is enough. We have come now to the heart of the deep, the abyss, the endless, featureless plain of the abyssal seafloor, stretching for miles in every direction. From 4,000 to 6,000 meters deep, this is the largest habitat on Earth by volume. Vast, silent, cold, dark. A world of soft mud and marine snow, where nothing grows tall and nothing moves quickly. Here, the giant amphipods scuttle across the sediment, scavenging whatever falls from above. Sea cucumbers, enormous, pale, cucumber-shaped creatures, glide slowly across the bottom, processing the mud through their bodies, extracting nutrients with extraordinary patience. Holothurians, they are called scientifically, and some species grow to over a meter long. They move so slowly, they seem almost stationary, inching across the seafloor over days or weeks. The rattles, grenadier fish, patrol the abyss, their long, tapering tails trailing behind them like rat tails, their enormous mouths scanning for morsels in the mud. They are the most abundant deep-sea fish, perfectly adapted to this slow, sparse world. And everywhere, the falling snow. Marine snow, that constant, gentle drift of organic particles from the productive layers above. It falls for kilometers. It takes days to reach the bottom, and it is the lifeblood of the abyss, the food that sustains everything. In this quiet world, there is no urgency, no competition for sunlight, because there is none, no seasons to rush through, just the slow accumulation of sediment, the patient filtering of particles, the endless, gentle rain from above. The abyss is a place of pure persistence. Life here is not about speed or size or flash. It is about endurance, about existing quietly for as long as the ocean allows. shadows. Mid-video reminder, your attention may wander now, and that is just fine. Let it drift like marine snow through the dark water. Sleep if it comes. The ocean will still be here. Rest in the abyss tonight. Let its quiet vastness envelop you. There is nowhere to go, nothing to chase, just the soft weight of the water, the slow fall of snow, the endless patience of the deep. You are safe here, held by the ocean, cradled in the dark. There is a place in the deep ocean where water meets water, not as waves, not as currents, but as a shoreline. On the seafloor, in the darkness, there are lakes. Lakes made not of fresh water, but of thicker, heavier brine, saltier than the surrounding sea, so dense that it settles into depressions on the seafloor and forms its own smooth, shimmering surface. These are brine pools. Some scientists call them underwater lakes, or goo lagoons, or brine lakes. They are among the rarest, strangest habitats on Earth. Imagine your view from a slowly gliding submersible. The lights are gentle, illuminating only a small circle of the dark seafloor. At first, you see only mud and scattered rocks. Then, something smooth appears ahead. A pale, rippling surface, perfectly flat, sitting in a shallow basin. As the sub approaches, you notice a sharp boundary, a clear line between the normal seawater and something denser below. It looks like a shoreline. If you dipped the sub's arm into that pool, it would not glide smoothly through. The brine is 3 to 8 times saltier than the surrounding seawater. It behaves almost like a thick, clear syrup. The sub's probe would sink slowly into it, pushing through with effort, creating ripples that move lazily outward, then settle again into perfect stillness. Around the edges of the brine pools, life gathers. Many creatures cannot cross this boundary. To them, the brine is lethal, too salty, too low in oxygen. Animals that stray too far in may lose control, roll, and sink to the bottom, where they lie preserved like statues in the dense, unmixed water. Researchers have found crabs, fish, and other animals resting motionless on the brine pool floor, as if gently laid there. But at the margins, right along the shoreline, something remarkable happens. Here, the chemistry is different. Methane and hydrogen sulfide seep from the seafloor along with the brine. Specialized bacteria gather to feed on these chemicals, using chemosynthesis to create energy without sunlight, just as they do at hydrothermal vents. These bacterial mats form the base of a small, concentrated ecosystem, a tiny oasis on an otherwise quiet, muddy plain. Mussels and clams settle into the sediment around the pool, housing chemosynthetic bacteria inside their tissues, much like the tube worms of the vents. Crabs graze on the bacterial mats, moving slowly along the edge of the brine, careful not to slip in. Worms extend their bodies into the seepage zones, absorbing chemical-rich water and feeding their own internal bacterial partners. It is as if the deep sea has drawn a clear, bright line on the seafloor and said, "Here, within this shimmering border, the rules are different." In the Gulf of Mexico, some brine pools look almost like small ponds, only a few tens of meters across. In the Red Sea, researchers have discovered larger, deeper pools, forming strange, milky surfaces in long seafloor depressions. The brine there is often superheated and enriched with metals, creating even more extreme chemical conditions. From the perspective of a drifting deep-sea creature, the approach to a brine pool would be like coming upon an alien shoreline. The water ahead suddenly becomes still and glossy. The boundary between normal seawater and brine is so sharp that small particles can be seen floating on it, as though resting on glass. If a fish swims too low, it may find the denser brine pushing up against its underside, lifting it slightly, refusing to mix. At the edge of the pool, you might see tube worms clustered like pale grasses, their roots exploring deep into the sediment to find sulfide. You might see mussel beds forming dense carpets, each mussel quietly housing its bacterial partners. You might see crabs picking at the bacterial mats like slow, deliberate gardeners. And all around, beyond the shimmering shoreline, the abyssal plain continues. Quiet, soft, brine pools have been found in only a few regions: the Gulf of Mexico, parts of the Mediterranean, and the Red Sea. Most of them lie hundreds or thousands of meters deep. They sit in silence, far from sunlight, their surfaces unruffled by wind or wave. Only when a submersible's lights pass over them, or when a slow-moving deep-sea animal ventures too close, does anything disturb that smooth, underwater lake surface. Imagine now that you are resting at the edge of one of these pools. Your body is on the solid seafloor of your own life, steady, still. But just beside you lies a pool of deeper quiet, a denser stillness that you can almost, but not quite, sink into. On its far shore, the world is the same, yet softer, slower, even more peaceful. You do not need to cross into it. You do not need to move at all. You can simply lie where you are, watching gentle ripples of thought travel slowly across your mind, the way tiny waves slide across the surface of the brine and then fade. The deep sea is full of hidden boundaries like this, sharp lines where chemistry changes, thin layers where sound bends, invisible fronts where water of different temperatures meets, and life quietly arranges itself along those lines, settles on those edges, makes its home where two worlds touch. Tonight, you rest on one of those edges, between waking and sleep. You may already feel yourself slipping gently toward the denser, deeper side into the brine quiet, where movement slows and sound softens, and the world becomes pleasantly thick with rest. If you are not there yet, there is no rush. The shoreline is patient. The pool will wait. Just breathe in and out as slowly as a ripple crossing an underwater lake. And know that somewhere in the dark, real lakes lie on the seafloor, still and silent, cradling small, bright oases of life. Life in the deep sea is not lived alone. Even in the darkest water, even on the quietest mud plain, there are partnerships, invisible threads of cooperation and dependence, tying different creatures together in ways that are gentle and precise. This is symbiosis, living together, and the deep ocean is full of it. We have already met some of these partnerships. The tube worms at hydrothermal vents, housing chemosynthetic bacteria inside their bodies, feeding them with sulfide-rich water and receiving nourishment in return. The mussels and clams at methane seeps, harboring methane and sulfide-eating bacteria in their gills. The corals providing homes for serpent stars and tiny crustaceans in their ancient branching skeletons. But there are even stranger partnerships hidden in the dark. Male anglerfish, for example, live some of the most intimate lives in the deep sea. In many species, the male is tiny, only a fraction of the female's size. He spends his early life drifting in the dark, searching for a female by smell and by the faint glow of her lure. When he finally finds her, he bites onto her skin, and he never lets go. Over time, his tissues fuse with hers. His blood vessels merge with her circulatory system. He loses his eyes, his fins, his separate organs. He becomes, in essence, a living attachment, just a small body delivering sperm when needed, sustained entirely by her bloodstream. Where once there were two fish, now there is almost just one, a single animal carrying her own permanently attached partner. It is a form of symbiosis as extreme as any in the natural world. A partnership so complete that the distinction between self and other becomes blurred. At methane seeps, places where methane slowly bubbles from the seafloor like a series of quiet underwater springs, other partnerships flourish. Bacteria that can oxidize methane gather in thick, pale mats. They feed on the methane seeping from below, turning it into usable energy. Certain clams and mussels arrive, settling into the seep sediment. Inside their tissues, they host these methane-eating bacteria in special cells. The bacteria receive a stable home and a steady supply of methane from the clam's circulatory system. The clam receives sugars and other nutrients produced by the bacteria. Over time, these seep communities grow into dense oases on the otherwise sparse seafloor. Tube worms extend long, root-like bodies deep into the sediment, tapping sulfide-rich layers and feeding their own internal bacteria. Crabs and sea spiders graze on the bacterial mats or on each other's bacterial partners. Recently, scientists discovered a new kind of partnership at methane seeps between tiny sea spiders of the genus Sericogera and diverse methane-oxidizing bacteria living on their exoskeletons. The spiders farm these bacteria on their own bodies, then gently graze them, using methane-derived carbon as a food source. It is like wearing a garden as a coat and snacking on it when needed. Everywhere in the deep ocean, microbes and animals form such alliances. Shrimp at mid-Atlantic vents host bacteria in special gill chambers. Some worms and clams have lost their digestive systems entirely, relying solely on internal symbionts to feed them. In these partnerships, the boundaries between individual and community blur, become soft and porous, much like the slow edges of a drifting cloud. Symbiosis is not always mutual and not always calm. There are parasitic isopods that replace the tongues of fish, hitching a ride in their mouths and feeding on their blood. There are tiny copepods that attach to jellyfish, feeding on their host while drifting safely in the water column. But in the deep sea, where resources are scarce, many of the most successful relationships are ones where both partners benefit. Each does something the other cannot. Each supports the other's quiet existence. Think of the anglerfish and her glowing lure. The light itself often comes from symbiotic bacteria living in that little bulb at the end of her spine. The fish provides a home and nutrients. The bacteria provide the glow that draws in prey. Together, they create a single, patient hunter in the dark. Symbiosis is about trust, in a way, about giving up a little independence in exchange for resilience, about accepting that there is strength in partnership, that even in the coldest, darkest places, life can be easier when it is shared. You, too, are a symbiotic being in a very real sense. Your body is home to trillions of microbes on your skin, in your gut, in your mouth, that help you digest food, train your immune system, and keep you healthy. You are not alone, even when you feel like you are. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep. You are held not just by the bed beneath you or the air around you, but by an entire invisible community of helpers, by a network of relationships, human, microbial, emotional, that sustains you in ways you may never fully see. The deep sea is a reminder of that. Far below in the darkness, tube worms and clams, shrimp and sea spiders, anglerfish and their glowing bacteria live in partnerships that allow them to survive where they otherwise could not. They do not rush. They do not question their worth. They simply exist in relationship, each one a quiet thread in a much larger web. Let yourself feel for a moment the gentle comfort of that idea. You are a thread too. You are connected, even in your quietest, most private moments. You are part of a community of life, on a planet where even the darkest water is filled with soft, cooperative light. If sleep is close now, you can let these thoughts drift away, like a small fish leaving the glow of an anglerfish lure to sink into safer darkness. If sleep is not quite here yet, you can rest in the knowledge that you do not need to hold everything alone. Somewhere in the deep, a tube worm is feeding its bacteria and being fed in return. A sea spider is quietly grazing the microbes on its own legs. A clam is opening and closing in the seep sediment, breathing in methane-rich water and breathing out the energy that sustains its quiet life. All of them together make a world. And you here, breathing slowly in the dark, belong to that world. Before we leave the deep sea completely, let us turn very gently toward you. We've talked about distant trenches, ancient corals, glowing creatures drifting in darkness, but in a quiet, factual way. The ocean is already part of you. The oceans cover about 70% of Earth's surface. Your own body is mostly water, more than half of you by weight is water softly held in cells and tissues and blood. The salt dissolved in that blood is very similar to the salt dissolved in seawater. Sodium, chloride, potassium, calcium, magnesium. The same basic ions, just in different amounts. You are, in a small and gentle way, a walking piece of ocean chemistry. The oxygen that fills your lungs with every slow breath is partly made by tiny drifting plants and algae in the sunlit ocean. Microscopic phytoplankton near the surface that quietly turn carbon dioxide and sunlight into sugar and oxygen. Every second breath you take likely owes something to the sea. So when you think of the deep ocean now, it is not something far away and separate. It is more like a deeper layer of the same planet that is keeping you alive, supporting your breath, balancing the climate around you, and carrying heat and nutrients in slow, global currents. Your day may have felt busy, scattered, noisy. But beneath that day, your body has been quietly keeping its own currents steady. Your heart has been beating like a small, persistent tide. Your lungs have been filling and emptying like gentle waves on a shore. Your thoughts have been rising and falling like patches of weather at the ocean's sunlit surface. And under all of that, deeper down, there is a quieter layer, just as the ocean has its surface storms and its deep, calm water. You have active thoughts at the top of your mind, and slower, quieter processes deeper down, your heartbeat, your digestion, your sleeping rhythms, all continuing without any need for conscious effort. The deep sea is a reminder that the calmest layers are often the ones we do not see. Scientists say that most of the ocean remains unexplored. In the same way, most of what your mind is capable of, most of your creativity, your dreams, your long-term memories, moves in deeper layers than your everyday awareness. Sleep is one of the ways you sink into those layers. When you fall asleep, brain waves slow, muscles soften, awareness narrows, and you descend from the bright surface of wakefulness into something quieter and more mysterious. It is not unlike drifting down from the sunlit epipelagic zone into the twilight, and further down into the calm and gentle dark. You do not force that descent. You allow it. The ocean does not force its currents either. They flow because of differences in temperature, in saltiness, in pressure, shaped by the slow turning of the earth and the steady warmth of the sun. Your own descent into sleep is guided by similar quiet forces, a buildup of tiredness through the day, a regular internal rhythm, the soft cue of darkness around you. All you need to do is not fight it. You can think of each breath now as a small, personal tide. Breathing in, the tide comes gently into shore. Breathing out, it withdraws again, leaving the sand smooth and quiet. Nothing dramatic, nothing rushed. Just the same motion, again and again, like waves on a night beach that go on long after anyone is there to watch. Far below those waves, in the deep layers, the water is almost completely still. Creatures rest on the seafloor. Corals filter the water. Sponges breathe slowly. Giant isopods doze in the sediment. If there are storms at the surface, they barely register down there. A small change in pressure, a faint passing swell, then stillness again. In the same way, today's storms, the busy moments, the sudden worries, the unexpected jolts, may have stirred the surface of your mind. But those storms do not reach all the way down. There are deeper layers in you that were calm all along. As you lie here, you can let your awareness sink just a little into those layers. You do not have to push your thoughts away. You can simply let them float at the surface and let your attention drop beneath them into something slower and quieter, like diving beneath surface waves and discovering that just a few meters down, the water is already smoother, cooler, more consistent. You might picture yourself now as an ocean in miniature. Your skin is the surface, feeling the air, the fabric, the temperature of the room. Your muscles and organs are like the mid-water zones, doing their steady work with no need for bright light and your deepest sense of rest. That feeling of being safe, held, and okay is the abyssal plain at the bottom, wide, patient, undisturbed. We have spent the whole night visiting the Earth's deep sea. Now, for these last moments, you can visit your own. No maps are needed. No machines. You reach it simply by breathing and letting go and allowing yourself at last to drift. In a moment, we'll return to the surface one last time to say goodnight. But for now, feel, if you can, that you are not separate from from the planet you live on. The same gravity holds you both. The same water cycles through clouds, rain, rivers, and your own cells. The same quiet laws of physics that shape ocean, waves, shape your heartbeat and your breath. You belong here on this ocean planet as surely as any lanternfish or coral or drifting, glowing jelly. You are part of the story, and you are allowed to rest. We have reached the gentle end of our long journey through the deep. For hours now, we have been drifting together through a world that most eyes will never see. We visited the twilight zone, where the last soft threads of sunlight fade and lanternfish flicker quietly in the dim blue water. We passed through the midnight zone, where no sunlight has ever shone, and yet life endures in the cold, stable dark. We rested beside hydrothermal vents and methane seeps, where bacteria turn the chemistry of the earth itself into quiet, steady energy. We watched marine snow fall kilometer after kilometer, carrying tiny gifts from the surface down into the waiting silence of the abyss. We paused at underwater lakes of brine, their surfaces smooth as glass on the seafloor, with small oases of life along their shimmering shores. We wandered through cold, ancient coral gardens, where some colonies have been growing for thousands of years. We listened to deep, low sounds, to whale songs that can travel across entire ocean basins. We met creatures that glow in a world where sunlight never reaches. Part of the vast majority of deep-sea animals that make their own light. All of this is happening right now as you lie here, as your breathing slows. Somewhere on this planet, a lanternfish is rising toward the surface in the longest daily migration on Earth. A tube worm is quietly feeding its bacteria at a vent. A giant sponge is filtering cold water in the dark, as it has done for centuries. A brine pool is lying utterly still on the seafloor, its dense surface untroubled by any wind. The ocean covers about 70% of Earth's surface. It is our planet's great, quiet background, the soft, blue-black backdrop against which everything else happens. And most of it is deep, Most of it is dark. Most of it is calm. Only a tiny fraction of that vast space has been explored. There are still canyons unvisited, mountain ranges unmapped, entire communities of animals unimagined. There are probably thousands, perhaps millions of species living in the deep ocean that we have not yet named. In a way, the deep sea is like sleep. Most of your life, moment by moment, is spent in wakefulness, like the sunlit surface of the ocean. Busy, bright, full of motion and noise. But every night you descend into quieter layers, into dimmer water, into a place where thoughts drift more slowly and sharp edges soften and time feels different. Just as the surface ocean rests upon miles of deep, silent water, your waking life rests upon a deeper ocean of rest and restoration inside you. You are not separate from the ocean. The salt in your blood is very close to the salt in seawater. The oxygen you breathe is partly produced by tiny marine plants and algae in the sunlit sea. The clouds that drift above you formed from water that once rose silently from the surface of the ocean. You are, in a very real way, a part of a planet that is mostly ocean. So when you imagine the deep sea now, you are not imagining some distant, alien world. You are imagining a part of your own home, a part of the same earth that holds you gently tonight. If your thoughts have become fuzzy, if you've drifted in and out of attention, that is perfectly okay. This story was never a test. You did not need to remember every name or every depth or every fact. The words were simply currents flowing past you like slow-moving water in the dark. Maybe you remember only the soft glow of bioluminescence, the fact that most animals drifting in the deep probably carry their own light. Maybe you remember the quiet patience of a tripod fish standing on the seafloor, or a coral colony older than recorded history. Maybe you remember the idea of lakes on the bottom of the ocean, or the image of a tiny sea spider wearing a garden of bacteria as a coat. Whatever remains with you is enough. The rest can sink gently into the dark like marine snow. If you are still awake, let your breath become very soft now, in and out. Feel the weight of your body where it rests. Notice how the surface beneath you supports you completely. The way the ocean supports everything that floats upon it. You do not have to hold yourself up. You can let go just a little more and be held. Imagine now that you are far above the abyssal plain, floating just weightless enough that you neither rise nor sink. All around you, the water is perfectly still, temperature steady, light absent, sound a distant, soft murmur every few moments. A tiny fleck of marine snow drifts past. A fragment of something that once lived in bright water, now completing its long, slow journey down. Occasionally, in the far distance, there is a faint flash, a small blue-green pulse from a jellyfish or a drifting siphonophore. The light appears, lingers, and fades again into the dark. There is no hurry, no rush of activity, just occasional, gentle glimmers. Your thoughts can be like that now. They can appear softly, glow for a moment, and then fade. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to analyze them. You can watch them pass like distant points of light in the deep. If a worry appears, you can imagine it as a tiny creature of the surface world that has somehow wandered too deep. It looks around, surprised by the darkness, by the pressure, by the quiet. Then, gently, it begins to fall down and away from you, into the soft sediment of the seafloor, where it settles and becomes part of the background. The deep sea does not rush toward anything. The currents there are slow. The changes are measured in centuries, not seconds. No creature of the abyss is judging itself for not moving faster. Tonight, you are allowed to be like them, unhurried, unbothered, existing in a layer of the world where time is stretched and softened. The ocean has been here for more than 4 billion years, long before your day, long before your worries, long before any of the stories that swirl at the surface. And it will be here tomorrow. So whatever you did today is already done. Whatever waits for you tomorrow can wait a little longer. The deep sea does not answer every question at once. It keeps many of its mysteries for another day. You can, too. For now, you can let the day sink. You can imagine the clock hands slowing, the lights dimming, the noise of the surface fading into a gentle, distant hum. Just you and the slow, steady rhythm of your breath, and an entire hidden ocean resting in the dark. If sleep has already arrived, then these words are nothing more than faint echoes, rippling across the surface of your dreams. If you are just on the edge, hovering in that soft space between waking and sleep, you can let yourself tip slowly, like a leaf drifting from air to water, from surface to depth. You are safe to drift. You are safe to rest. You are held by your bed, by the quiet of the night, by a world whose deep foundations are calm and dark and full of gentle life. Thank you for drifting through the ocean with me on Sleepy Facts with Justin. May your sleep tonight be as deep and as peaceful as the quiet sea.